What I want to talk about today is identity theft, a kind of identity theft that never shows up on your credit report. And this type of identity theft happens when life, pain, rejection, criticism, comparison, and repeated negative messages disconnect us from who we were created to be, like who you were created to be. And I also want to talk about how your identity gets stolen, how people start living the wrong life, a different life, and what it takes to reclaim your God-given identity before it can cost you your peace, before it can cost you your purpose, before it can cost you your confidence, before it can cost you your future. But another way to think about this is before it can cost you your birthright. And we've seen these stories play out on the screen where someone has a royal identity, but they don't know it. A prince who gets stolen from the palace, or a princess who, you think about the story of Cinderella. But why is it attractive, and why do we identify with it? Why do we root for the individual with the stolen identity? I think it's because there's a piece of us that knows that we're living out a very similar life, and we're waiting to be rescued. Only difference is, in this case, you have to actually ask for the rescue. You have to actually fight for the rescue. No one's showing up on a white horse. I believe the worst type of identity theft is not financial theft. Now, that can be inconvenient, no question, but it's not the worst type of theft. Recently, I had my car broken into, and they didn't take anything. I was joking with one of the guys at the gym that I played ball with. They didn't even take my books. It's like I was offended. They didn't take a copy of the book, right? That I can live through, right? That type of incursion and theft is something that I'm willing to deal with. What I don't want to deal with is the theft of my confidence, the theft of my personal significance, the theft of my purpose, and the theft of my connection to the Creator, which gives me my birthright. That type of theft, that will break you. You know, as I was driving in, I was thinking about today's show, like identity theft. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different people, and almost every person I've worked with, if they weren't connected to their purpose, what we always find is something snuck in and got in the way. It could have been abuse as a child, sexual assault. The list just goes on. But something snuck in and got in the way. And as an adult now, they're looking to do the painful work of really piecing themselves back together. And last week we talked about regret. And if regret is the invoice of bad decision making, and purpose helps us make decisions we do not regret, I would say that identity sits underneath them both. Because if I don't know who I am, then how can I make decisions from a place of purpose? Because your identity and your purpose are synonymous. They're one and the same. And once identity gets stolen, it happened to me. The first part of that identity at 8 or 9 years old, where as a little boy, I wasn't able to relate to myself as a little boy anymore, right? I was dealing with thoughts, dealing with things that I should have never been exposed to. And so once that identity gets stolen, and what happens is your purpose gets distorted. And when I think about the early part of my life, those early years, like I was still dealing with the pain of that identity theft. I was dealing with the pain of the theft of innocence. And I wonder how many of us are still dealing with things that were stolen from us as children to this day. And the beauty is, we'll talk about this in the second hour, is that identity can be reclaimed. It can be reclaimed. There can be healing. But we first have to know the identity was stolen. So, what happens when your identity is stolen that way? Like, what happens when your spiritual and psychological identity is stolen? And how does that damage your life? How does that damage your purpose? How does it damage your calling? And once again, a stolen car can cost you money. I mean, somebody steals your social security number and use that. It can be incredibly inconvenient these days. By the way, you should, like at this point, with the way AI is going, just take a tip from me. You should have insurance. You should be paying insurance every month for identity theft, which is why we're not even talking about that, right? That right there, do that. But more importantly, your identity, a stolen identity can cost you years. It can cost you relationships. I believe it's one of the things that gets in the way of our ability to be courageous. It can cost you your life assignment. And more than anything, it can cost you your peace. It can cost you your peace. Okay, so then what does identity theft look like? Because you might be asking yourself, well, man, has this happened to me? Like, and the crazy part is when your car gets stolen, your identity gets stolen, you know fairly quickly. Well, sometimes you don't. I was listening to a report, young man, he didn't know his identity was stolen until he went to college, and somebody had already gone to college in his name and taken all the financial, all the financial aid. Can you imagine, like registering for college, and they're like, "You already came here, man. You graduated." You're like, "What? No, I didn't. I'm 18 years old, right? How could I graduate?" No, and you're applying for this loan and for this financial aid. You've already received thousands of dollars of financial aid, right? And it's kind of like, no, I haven't. But can you imagine that? And as bad as that sounds, here's what I think is worse. Because this is what real identity theft looks like. Real identity theft is like you don't have confidence. You don't have confidence in your voice. You don't have confidence in yourself. You don't have confidence in your physical appearance and how you show up. And so what happens is you find yourself shrinking, holding back, moving into corners. You're often living from fear and accepting labels that never belong to you. And by the way, you're accepting labels from the folks who actually stole your identity in the first place. You're becoming the pain that you were told to be. You're living out the pain that you were told you are. And what happens is you begin making decisions from the wounds instead of the truth about who you be, about who you are. And you confuse adaptation with authenticity. Now, what do I mean by that? You choose doing what everybody else is doing, adapting to how everybody else is moving, adapting to what everybody else is wearing, adapting to how everybody else is talking, versus being your authentic self and showing up as you, the prince, the princess with the birthright. And all this is happening because you're functioning disconnected from the real you, your real identity. So then you would say, well, if all that's happened to me, then who are the possible thieves? Like, who actually steals identities? Well, at the very top of the list, we know it's the great deceiver. And let me pause there real quick. Because when I say the great deceiver, let me tell you how deception is really, man. Like, The great deceiver has gotten to a point where he can put his name on something and we'll still watch and listen. Like this is, and this is how good he's gotten at deceiving us around what we can and cannot do, or what we should and should not listen to, and what inputs we should not. And so I gotta take a moment to help us really understand how identity gets stolen, because part of it is through deception, because some of us, maybe those things didn't happen to us. We just gave it up. We gave it up because we got deceived. And, you know, they say the biggest trick the devil ever played was to convince everyone that he didn't exist. But the reason that's the biggest trick is because it's a deception trick. It's a deception trick. I will deceive you into believing I don't exist so you don't know who is stealing from you. And so the thing that I think is scariest about when we start to look at how identity is stolen is that often we don't even know because it was taken through deception. Like it was taken and something else was given, and it was done with such subtlety. It was so smooth that we didn't even see the transfer. That's what deceit looks like. And often, I believe it happens from people who have been deceived by the great deceiver. And I have to put that out there, right? So then, if I'm in any of these roles, I have to ask myself, am I allowing myself to be deceived? And if I'm being deceived, I can actually be the hand of the deceiver in stealing someone's identity. So when I go through this list, I want you to keep that in mind, that many times it's not the intent of the person, but if they're deceived, then they're being used by the deceiver to steal your identity. If I showed up at your door and I knocked and I said, can I come in so I can steal everything you have, destroy your household, and kill you all, you would say absolutely not. So it doesn't go that way. How it goes is, hey, I got some wonderful things for you. I got some things that you've never seen, and you can get them easier than you ever got them. Can I come in and show you all about it? You go, wow, well, yeah. And by the way, I look good, I smell good, I'm dressed nice. That's deception. That's deception. And then you let me in. And what you don't know is what I'm really selling you is death, theft, right? Like you don't, and destruction. And this is how it works. This is how it works. I'll give you an example. One of the tools of deception is music, right? And so if it's a tool of deception, it's got to sound good. Although I would say the music today don't sound, it don't even, unless it's like it don't even resonate with me spiritually. But I'd be like, how could somebody, I don't get it. Like, why is this attractive? Anyway, I would say the era I was growing up in, the music was way more attractive. It was way more deceptive, if you follow. It was melodious. Nowadays, and this is what I mean. Nowadays, it's kind of almost like, let me take, I don't even got to show up in a nice suit, smelling good, looking good. You just going to let me in anyway. But for most of us, if you, by my age, it had to look good. So who are the possible thieves? Well, the possible thieves are a parent who spoke negatively, a parent who exposed you to things, a parent who didn't keep up guardrails for the child. Like, so they didn't steal the identity, but they allowed other things in to steal the identity. A teacher who, for whatever reason, was misaligned with their purpose. They shouldn't have been in the classroom. They were doing it for a paycheck, annoyed, upset, disgruntled, saying things to the children, you being one of them, that would plant seeds in their spirit that would grow and take their true identity. A sibling, simply because they're immature, simply because when you're young, you can do cruel things. But that cruel thing stuck. You believed it. A classmate. And it's funny, my son, he's 8 years old, and he's got a few people in his class. I know their names, right? He'd be like, man, this dude's always saying something to me. And my job as a parent to be like, and you know who you are, right? You know who you are. You shouldn't even react. Like, let it fall off you. Say what you will. He's still working through that. Let it fall off you. My son likes to say it again, right? I'm bald. For those of you who are on the radio, you can't see me, but, in the stream, my son is more like, man, say it again. Like he's that guy, right? Ball up those fists. Say it again. I'm like, hey, man, you got to stop throwing hands. It's just like you can't let it affect you. I didn't have to talk to the principal a few too many times. And, that's, but part of it is we've put in him to guard his identity, right? A leader, someone who was like, you just don't get it. You're not good enough. You took that. A romantic relationship, a breakup. I've been guilty of it, disgruntled, saying something that I meant to hurt the other person because I was hurt, because I was disappointed. But what if that thing stuck? What if that seed grew? God forgive me, right? A failure. And here's the thing about failure. Let me say this about failure. Failure has a way of, if you don't understand the lesson it was supposed to teach, of somehow grafting itself to our identity. And I've said this before, but I believe most failures are really the springboard for the next level. And if you don't jump to that next level, it's because instead of learning the lesson, you took it on as a part of your identity. And hopefully that makes sense. You took it on as a part of your identity. Like, oh, man, I failed because I am, right? I am something. And that's real dangerous. No, you failed because there's something you didn't understand, something you didn't know that now you do. How can you build on top of that? How can you build on top of that? Trauma. I read a book recently. What's the name of this book? Because people want to know when I say this. Oh, man. I read it when I was in Uganda last year. I can't remember. What is the name of this book? And I took some notes, too. Here, let me search my notes real quick and see if I can find. But the short and long of the book is that the author was making a case against trauma. And what he was saying is that often we allow the idea of trauma and the idea that I've been broken to steal our identities. And basically the way that psychology has worked today, and he kind of went after Freud and some of the other psychologists and even talked about like the source. Remember, I want you to remember something. Remember I talked about the great deceiver, right? Like if the great deceiver can use a quote unquote intellect, philosopher, psychologist, or scientist to reinforce something, because you suffered pain, you become this. That's identity theft. And then I hear that and I go, that's why I'm this way. And I accept it. That's identity theft. That's identity theft. And, oh, man, the book will come to me later. I don't. And I know y'all going to have the questions. If you follow me, as soon as I find, maybe I'll take a picture of the book and put it on my story. Adler. It was Adler. It's part of what he was talking about is Adler's psychology. You can look up Adler's psychology. The book is related to Adler's psychology, who was opposed to Freud, Freudian psychology and things, and Jung psychology. But the reason I'm bringing that up and even sharing about it is because often trauma is one of the biggest thieves of identity. And what this author was saying is it's a thief because we've been told it's a thief. We've been told that if you experience trauma, then this is what happens. He was like, but you have a choice. Like, you have a choice. You can counteract that with choice. One of the most powerful things the Creator gave us is choice. One of the most powerful things he gave us is the opportunity to reconnect with him and choose that identity, which is one of the reasons I agreed with what Adler had to say about trauma. Not that it doesn't create a wound. I've had wounds that needed to be healed through therapy. I'm not discounting that at all. And therapy, in many ways, helps us reconnect with our true identity. It did for me. The other one is a stereotype. I belong to this group, I act this way, and so I just fall into it, and it takes my identity. By the way, this is something that many of us as, so-called black folks succumb to. Well, because, I'm black, this is how I act. And it's like, that is a secondary part of your identity. Secondary meaning physical aspect of your identity, and your primary aspect of your identity is spiritual. The primary aspect of your identity is spiritual. We talked about this in the purpose course yesterday. And so if I'm a spiritual being and how I relate to myself is as a spirit, right? Because if my spirit leaves, you say Linal is gone, even though the body is still here. Everybody agrees with this, but then it becomes more of a kind of like a brain warp when we begin to relate to ourselves in that way. But first and foremost, I'm a spirit. Racism is one of the ways identity has been stolen. And then we fall into these groups. We relate to one another as these groups. That's identity theft. You're a spirit. You're a child of God, no matter what you look like on the outside, the physical exterior. Identity theft. And if you add all this up into repeated seasons of rejection, like people begin to, well, this is who I am. But there are also some psychological principles, because if we're talking about identity theft, this is a matter of the mind. And in philosophy, personal identity is the question of what makes a person the same person over time, consistently, right? What makes a person the same person over a certain period of time where you can identify with them? You can actually trust them. What makes you across the course of your entire life? Because the way I want you to think about this is you were born to be someone. And you were born to be that someone so that you would die that someone. So what happens in between is some level of identity theft. And what I'm afraid of is we're born to be someone, and then within a few years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 12 years, like we get knocked off course, and many of us never get back on course. And then we're wondering why we feel the way we feel, the anxiety, the fear, the rejection, the pain. And it's like, because you're off course. You're traveling through the thorns, through the woods. You're not supposed to be on that path. So the first principle is this principle around personal identity. Like, who do I see myself as? The second principle is this principle of social identity, because there's a theory called social identity theory. And social identity theory explains how people define themselves both as an individual and as members of a group, and how that shapes their behavior and self-understanding. So another way to think about this is, as human beings, like, we are communal. Like, we see ourselves as part of a tribe. And if I'm rejected by the tribe, then many times I begin to make that a part of my identity because of the social identity theory. Because if I can't fit in, then there must be something wrong with me. Versus maybe I'm not fitting in because there's something wrong with the group. Right? And most of us will resort to, there must be something wrong with me, rather than maybe I don't belong to this group. Maybe I wasn't created to run with this group. Maybe I should be running with stallions and lions, and this group, they're a different animal, and I stick out. And instead, like, oh man, something's wrong with me. It's like, no, you're not in the right group. You're not aligned with your purpose. Not aligned with your purpose. So why does all this matter? Personal identity, social identity. It matters because identity, as I see it, has become a major issue in our society. And more, I would say even more so in our community. And identity shapes belonging. It shapes your behavior. It shapes your confidence. It shapes your self-perception. It shapes the direction of your life. And once a person loses a stable sense of their identity, then they become vulnerable to deception, to false definitions of who they are. And I think what happens is then they begin to borrow someone else's life. And when I borrow someone else's life, I always feel incomplete, because when I compare myself to them, I'm always a little behind, because it's not supposed to be my life. Now, if you're listening to this, it might be hitting home. You might be feeling a certain kind of way because, like, Linal, you don't understand what I've been through. It's, I can hear you. People say that to me often. I hear you, right? I intellectually can grab what you're saying, but in terms of internalizing it, I really don't know how. Yesterday, when I was working with the Slayer Goals group, I talked a lot about David. Because here's a person who, like, if he was stuck on his physical and external identity, would have never rose to greatness. Right? Because, based on his personal and physical identity, like, he was no quote unquote match for Goliath based on his external identity. But thanks to the Creator, that's the secondary portion of your identity. It's not the primary. The primary portion of your identity is your spirit. And I think when we think about David and Goliath, what we forget is that David had the largest spirit. He had the dominant spirit because he was connected to the Creator himself. He was connected to the source of all spirit. And so he was bigger than Goliath. And it showed up in the battle. And the only way to begin to overcome this is to realize, like, wait a second. If I get connected, I can be bigger than what I am. One of the things that David said in Psalms, he said, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am fearfully and like you crafted me in the way that you wanted me to be. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well, that my spirit knoweth righteousness, that my spirit is connected, that my spirit is connected. So I am physically, fearfully and wonderfully made. But more than anything, my spirit knoweth right well, knoweth you. My spirit knows you. The wrong life gets lived when the wrong identity gets believed. And what I'm afraid of is most of us, we're disconnected to the right identity being your spiritual identity. Who are you in the Creator's eyes? Now, if this is happening, then what's happening is I'm living the wrong internal definition. Like if I'm living externally, if my identity is based in my external way of showing up, I'm living the wrong identity. Like your identity's been stolen. And I started off with this idea of the great deceiver. And let me tell you how bold things are getting. So yesterday, hey man, pull up. Rob Zombie has a brand new album out. What's the name of that album? I'll pull up Spotify. Now, mind you, I don't even listen to rock and roll, right? That's not even, so why it popped up in my feed? You know, I'm like, don't y'all got an algorithm? Like, why are you popping this up? But I believe the creator does things on purpose, right? And I'm preparing for the purpose course, and I'm putting the music. What's that?
The Great Satan.
The Great Satan. Now, hold on. Like, you laughed, right? Yeah. So how could you name an album that you want people to listen to? The Great Satan. Unless people are so deceived that they'll play it. What do you think's going to happen to you? Are you going to have pleasant thoughts? Are you going to be filled with peace? If you listen, like, I don't even got to listen to the album. When it popped up, I thought, who makes an album cover? And he's kind of, is that like almost in a crucifixion of, like, is that how he looks on here? Yeah, right? He has himself almost in a crucifixion type of manner.
6 arms,
Yeah, with 6 arms, right? We know what that means. And the title of it says, The Great Satan. You have to be deceived to listen to that. Or you have to say, this is my father. Like, I mean, it's one or two things, right? Now, this is one of the reasons. So you may have noticed that let me just pause for a second. You may have noticed that I've taken a much more spiritual stance to the show. Okay? And that's the reason. Because they become so overt with darkness and evil that I believe that for those of us who stand in the light, we've got to become more overt about righteousness. Period. Like the gloves are off. It's like, okay, you taking your gloves off? Let me take mine off, right? Psalms 139:14. Like, that's how I fight. That's how I fight my battles, right? And I'm going to tell you something. If that's not how you fight your battles in what we're dealing with today, then you dealing with a blunt sword. It ain't going to cut nothing, right? You might strike the death blow, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm rubbing my neck right now. Ah, you tried to hurt me, huh? And you ain't cutting nothing. So it's like it's time out for just playing small. Like you got to play a lot bigger. As children, most of us dream without restraint. I look at my son yesterday. He came downstairs. I thought I woke up early. And boy, he was up right behind me, right? He came downstairs and he was just, talking. Dad, what about this? What about that? I mean, his mind is just, I could do this. I could do that. It's just expansive, like no restraints. He believes in all possibility. His imagination is bold. And we feel connected to what we could be. Then life happens. Somebody says, and this is the thing that my wife and I are constantly counteracting, you can't do that. I'm like, hey, they say I can't. What? Man, please. Yes, you can. Like, we're constantly counteracting these things, right? You can't. You're not enough. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. We went through a little bit of that this year in school. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can get that grade. Yes, you can. Put your mind to it. Now he's getting the grade on, Dad, look at this. Yeah. You get where I'm going? You won't ever. You're weird. You're different. Yes, I'm weird. Yes, I'm different because I have a distinct identity. I should be a little weird to you. I should be a little different to you. I have a distinct identity. No, I'm not going to do it the way that you do. I'm not going to always see it the way that you do. I have a distinct identity. I'm unique. I have a distinct essence. I have a distinct spiritual substance. The Creator made me just the way He wanted me to be for the purpose that He put me on the planet for, which is different from yours. But what happens is you keep hearing this. You can't. You're not enough. You won't ever do this. You're weird. You're different. What's wrong with you? And at some point, If we don't know better, we begin to allow these words to seep into the spirit and become a text that starts sounding like the truth, and we get deceived. If you deal with self-doubt, who's the first person that ever made you question yourself? Think about that. If you deal with negative self-talk, what are some of the words that still echo in your mind, and how long they've been bouncing around there? If you know you're out of alignment in terms of who you're supposed to be and your identity, what version of you got buried? What version of you needs to be dug up? Here's another question. Where did you first start editing yourself? Like changing yourself to fit in, to survive? I remember in college, and when I look back, man, it was like I was so confused. But I remember when, I went to college, I was at university, man. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I gotta do this and I gotta do that. Oh, they got tattoos. Maybe I need to get a tattoo. Right? It's like just trying to figure out, like, how do I look like fit in? Now, how do I fit in? And the crazy part is identity theft typically happens through repetition. Something constantly hitting you over and over again. Or humiliation. You get humiliated. Comparison. Like, man, you like this and that. Like, you ain't like them. Right? Versus, and at the time, especially when we're young, we don't know that that's a good thing. Right? That's a good thing. Like, I understand now why in college and some of those years I didn't fit in. I understand now. It was like, I understand now when they were like, hey, man, you're not going to smoke some of this, because then I was like, nah, bro, I'm good. And they're like, man, you a weirdo, bro. It's like, I didn't understand why I was a weirdo. Like, thank God. Right? I didn't understand the criticism. And then the pressure to conform. Remember the first time, I didn't even like beer. I remember the first time I drank like beers back to back. It was just like, man, you gonna be here? You gonna do it? You gonna do it? And then you're like, I didn't like it. But there are emotionally charged moments, right? And emotion has a creative capacity that can seep in. And if we don't know better, what begins to happen is we break. Authority figures that we trust, speaking carelessly, casting spells with their words. If you don't do this, then you're that. Right? And because of who they are, we believe it. We take it in. We accept it. And nobody helped us understand that something's been misinterpreted. No, that's not right. And because it's happening over and over and over again, it starts to feel like the truth. One of my favorite quotes by Henry David Thoreau, he says, a single footstep would not make a path on the earth. So a single thought would not make a path in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we must walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our minds. And what I'm afraid of, many of us were thinking the kind of thoughts that we shouldn't have been thinking, and now it dominates our mind. I'm not good enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not light enough. I'm not dark enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not small enough. And then over time, we begin to believe that. And it starts to get into the core of our vibration. And we start to become and exist as a different person from who we were supposed to and designed to be. Ultimately, this means that lies, while when they're repeated, they become powerful, don't have to be true and don't have to be powerful. How do we unwind that? The only reason they have power is because they've been repeated in your mind, in your space enough to feel familiar. That's why the current identity sits on you. How do we disrupt that? How do we disrupt that? Hey, if you're enjoying what you're watching right now, do me a quick favor. I want you to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss when we drop new content. Seriously, it means the world that you're here. Thanks for watching, and let's get back to it. A false identity, the only way for it to remain is that it has to be repeated through your thoughts. We ended the first hour with that, okay? And that false identity, the problem with it is that it begins to show up in your choices. It begins to, like we talked about decision-making last week, like how to make decisions we don't regret. If I'm not connected to my identity, how do I make a choice I don't regret? I'm going to continue to make choices I regret. And so it shows up in our choices. It shows up in our tolerance. It shows up in our relationships. It shows up in our habits, the habits we pick up. I believe that many of the habits we have is a part of taking on the wrong identity. So now I'm trying to be something that I'm not. And the only way for me to actually be with all of it are these habits that numb me or fog me. It shows up in our self-talk. And then what happens is it shows up in our future. So here's some signs. Like if you're curious, like here's some signs that your identity has actually been stolen. Okay? Here's some signs that your identity has actually been stolen from you. Here's the first one. You compare yourself. And I want to say constantly, because I do believe that sometimes the great deceiver will get in there and be like, you doing that? And you're like, and you got to be able to cast that thing off and be like, I'm not even supposed to do that. I think I told a story some time ago where that happened to me. And I'm like, that's not who I am, man. Come on. And I step back into my identity. But if you're constantly comparing yourself, that's a sign that your identity may have been stolen. Because whatever you're comparing yourself to is what you identify as. When I identify as my God-given purpose, that becomes the guardrails. Like there's nobody else that I'm supposed to be. There's nobody else that I'm like, well, why am I not doing that? What they doing? And what's going on over there? And what does that mean for me? It's like, no, I'm on my knees praying, asking, what is it that you would have me do? I'm so focused on that. And anybody else that's doing something, does it edify my purpose? And if it does, thank God for them. And may he lift them up and continue to bless them, right? Continue to favor them so that they can feed my purpose too. When your identity has been stolen, you hide your gifts. Sometimes you don't even know your gifts. One of the exercises I took the cohort through yesterday was identifying their top 10 gifts and talents. Top 10 gifts and talents. And it every time people were having a difficult time with that. Like, what are the gifts? What are my talents? When I fully stepped into my identity, these are things I know and I own. I want you to think about something here. When the Creator allowed you to be born, and one of the things we did yesterday, I'm actually going to read it out because I wanted the cohort yesterday to really understand like the significance of birth. All right. I really wanted them to understand, like, man, what a blessing it is to be born. What a blessing it is to actually be here. And so I went on Claude with the group. I had Claude voice on. And I asked the question, and I said, hey, can you give me the probability of my birth, Claude? How probable is it that I was born and that I am me? And this is what Claude said, the long and short of what Claude said. It was like, well, the probability of you existing is astronomically small. I want y'all to stay with me on this. You're talking about the exact sperm and egg meeting at the precise moment for you to exist. But you're also talking about your parents meeting. And then you're also talking about going back through generation after generation after generation of your parents' meeting and so on and so forth, and also them actually surviving. I want you to think right now about many of our paternal ancestors that were in wars that somehow made it out. They made it back home, whether the war was with swords or bullets. And they said, the Creator blessed me to be here. Not understanding why, that part of the reason they had to make it through is so that you could exist. And now you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. I really want you to get this. I really want you to get this. Oh, who am I? I don't know. What should I be them over there? Like he spared their lives so that you could be. Because he knew he needed you here because you serve a specific purpose. And then Claude went on to say that some people calculate that the probability of actually breathing is 1 in 400 trillion. I'm going to say that again. The probability of you actually being is 1 in 400 trillion. So if that's the case, am I supposed to be conforming? Am I supposed to be somebody else? Am I supposed to be like indistinguishable from the group? No, I'm supposed to be me. I'm supposed to be a weirdo. Matter of fact, most of my friends, people probably say they're different or eclectic. And the reason I can be friends with them is because they know who they are and they allow me to be me. And we can be in relationship and enjoy the uniqueness of one another. Somebody say, well, how's that friend? You got to do this and that. You got you doing it. Look, man, I respect how they want to roll. I don't have a problem with it. And guess what? They respect how I want to roll. My wife was saying that one of my friends, I was like, let me send him an email and so we can get on the phone. Like, why you can't just call him? Man, he's supposed to be your friend. Man, why you can't? Look, man, this is how he operates. I respect that. And that has nothing to do with friendship, right? Real friends, I'm going to honor and respect the way that because I'm his friend. It's okay that he's different. It's okay that, you got to be like everybody else. I get it. I don't want everybody calling me either. I prefer to email me first, too. The difference between me and him is I just don't pick up. Okay, so now we understand how it's a miracle that you're here. So the great deceiver comes in and says, oh, you don't have a purpose, you don't have a being, you don't have a reason. I want you to ask yourself this. Where are you performing versus living authentically as you? By the way, performance takes a lot of energy. It's exhausting. It takes a lot of energy. Can you imagine this morning if I woke up and I had to figure out what suit and tie I was going to wear and what color and, make sure it's a lot of energy. A lot of energy. Why do you wear the same T-shirt every Sunday? I'm just me. I'm just me. I try to switch it up for y'all sometimes, different T-shirt. I'm just me. I'm living authentically. Until the Creator says do something different, that's what it's going to be. Where am I tolerating what does not match who I am? That group don't match you. But you keep trying to show up. You don't even feel comfortable in the group. They don't feel comfortable with you. You can feel it. As soon as you walk away, they're saying stuff about you. Why are you still going? I think part of this comes down to trust, that the Creator will actually put you in the group you belong in. Here's another one, a big one. Where are you living from injury versus identity? Some of us, we're living not to be hurt again. Versus asking, how am I supposed to be living? And once I'm in alignment, no injury can occur because I'm guarded. I'm safe. I'm protected. And so what happens is when I'm operating in these false identities, then my decisions are confused. I have weak boundaries. I have misaligned relationships. I have underused gifts, underused talents. What a tragedy. I self-sabotage myself. There's spiritual drift. I have no power, and I am consumed with regret. So why is this important? And I've said this before, but you don't got to know the laws, but the laws are always working. You don't got to know the laws, but the laws are always working. And so the more in tune and the more knowledgeable you get about the laws, the more you can align yourself. The law of cause and effect. Causation is the relationship in which one event or condition brings about another. Cause and effect. For every effect, there's a cause. There has to be. The cause produces the effect. So one of the reasons that many of us live with confused decisions, weak boundaries, misaligned relationships, underused gifts, self-sabotage, spiritual drift, and regret is because something caused it. Identity was stolen. Somewhere you got deceived. Something caused that. That's not how you're supposed to live. There's a cause to that. So then what happens is when I'm living in that cause that I'm not supposed to live in, I begin to play out this self-fulfilling prophecy. And let me be clear about what a self-fulfilling prophecy is. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a process in which an expectation, whether it's false or not, an expectation begins to influence my behavior in ways that help bring about the expected result. Self-fulfilling prophecy. By the way, this is why the wealthy stay wealthy and the poor stay poor. Because if I believe that my decisions are going to disrupt my finances, then guess what's going to happen? If I believe that something else is going to happen, come along, that just disrupts my business, guess what's going to happen? Like, we don't understand how powerful we are. We don't get it. We don't understand it. So a self-fulfilling process is a process in which an expectation, even if it's false, begins to influence my behavior to bring about the expected result. Do you realize if the source of my actions is that I am not enough, that it's going to prove to me that I am not enough? This is why a conversation like this can be so difficult for people really to sit in. Like, really, Linal, can I transform? Can I truly transform? Yes. So why does this matter? If we know the great deceiver, right, and we talk like it's bold now. It's just out here in our face. So if we know the great deceiver is a liar, then if I take one of those lies and I believe it deeply enough, it will start generating real life results in my life. That's why we got to guard our minds, man. If I believe I'm not worthy, then it begins to manifest in my life. So, and so a lot of times people say, yeah, he ain't talking to me. I got proof that things don't work out for me. And the reason you have proof things don't work out for you is because you believe that thing. If you believe you're not capable, guess what? You're not capable. Henry Ford said, years ago, whether you believe you can or you can't, you are right. And these quotes stick because they're tied to truth. They're tied to scripture. So then we say, well, it's more comfortable to say that, so let me say that. But it's tied to some level of truth. Proverbs 29:18 said, where there's no vision, the people perish. If I can't see myself doing it, then I cannot do it. Then it goes on to say that he that keepeth the law, another way to say that is he that knoweth the law, he that know the laws, happy is he. So you go to Hosea and it says, my people perish from lack of knowledge, because many of us don't know the laws. And then we're operating outside the laws trying to figure out why things aren't working. A false identity does not just stay in your head. It starts writing out your life. So then the issue is not just what happened to you that caused this, right? Because for every effect, there's a cause. So something caused this. The issue is what got planted in you and what that plant is now producing. Remember, every seed creates some type of fruit. So then what is that seed now producing in you? Self-doubt, anxiety, fear. Like, how do I root that seed out? Now I want to talk to somebody who knows their identity, but it broke down. Because somebody out there, like you, at one point you stepped into your identity. You stepped into your identity powerfully, and then there was a breakdown. So you can see the gap. You can see the delta in your life. And maybe something led you to today's show, and you're like, man, I hear this guy. I know where I'm supposed to be, but I'm off course. Why am I off course right now? What is going on? What got me off course? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So, if identity is not reinforced by truth, it will be pressured by whatever is loudest. This is why we have to guard our inputs. Yesterday, at the end of the course, let me finish this thought. I'm going to go to what we did yesterday. If identity is not reinforced by truth, it will be pressured by whatever is loudest. It will be pressured by whatever is closest. My mom used to tell me, you gotta be careful who you lay with, son. You gotta be careful who you share a pillow with, son. It will be pressured by whatever's closest. They can actually break your identity. You gotta be careful who you're in relationship with. It can break your identity. It can take your identity. If identity is not reinforced by truth, it can be pressured by what's repeated most. Man, you know, you watch television, you see these weight loss drugs. And I don't know if it's just my algorithm because I'm interested in health, but then I see the lawsuits hitting them. These lawsuits are hitting these drugs. And I'm like, how could they even market this to folks when you see what's on the other side of it? But you know how they can market it is because people, they're living under a false identity. If I just lost a lot of weight, everything would be better. No, you're still going to be dealing with you. You're still going to be dealing with the same insecurities, still the same fear, the same anxieties. And now you're going to have some health issues on top of all that. And then because you made the decision without going through the decision-making framework of purpose, now you're going to have regrets. I'm telling you, leave it alone. Leave it alone. You get connected with the Creator. He will recraft both your internal and external identity over time. You will become unrecognizable. I can promise you that. Folks want to do it the fast way. But they keep repeating the commercials, right? Because if I'm going to convince you that you need this. And don't look at the truth. Don't look at the side effects. I'm going to convince you that you need this. And so when my identity is not reinforced by truth, what happens is anything that's repeated, I start to be like, well, maybe that's it. Or pain. I remember when my mom passed, 2021. Her and I, we were going through reading the Bible together. And we were still in the Old Testament when she passed away. And after she passed, man, I was like, how could you take my mother, man? The spiritual woman, righteous woman. I just stopped reading. I stopped, it's like the truth stopped being reinforced. All of a sudden, I'm dealing with things. voices telling me to do wild stuff. Like, something don't feel right. Thank God for a group of men. I was putting it on loudspeaker with the men. I said, hey, man, this is what I'm dealing with. One of them asked me, he said, hey, when's the last time you prayed and read? So, it's been a while. I ain't talking to the guy. I'm not talking to that guy right now. So, oh, man. And he said that really transformed my relationship with God. He's like, oh, you're mad. He was like, that means that you got a good relationship, because in good relationships, people get mad. You're mad. You're upset. Your feelings are hurt. He took your mother. He was like, and he's going to be sitting there waiting on you. Because that's when someone loves you in a relationship, even when you get mad and you stop talking, guess what? When you're ready to talk, they say, okay, let's talk. That's real love, right? He said that to me. It opened something back up. And then, those voices that were, getting loud, repeating, just stopped. Back in relationship, reinforcing the truth. I want to tell you something. When it comes to your identity, insight is not enough. Maybe you got some insights today. I'm telling you, this is not enough, right? One breakthrough moment is not enough. Like, oh man, something popped for me today. That's not enough. One episode is not enough. Well, how do I know that? Because in the world we live in now, there are things louder than my voice. There are things closer than my voice. There are things that are being repeated more than my voice, unless you get the podcast and you're just like, let me put this on repeat. That's how you got to play it sometimes, man. Nothing could be more attractive than where I'm supposed to be. Identity, your identity has to be protected and reinforced and renewed over and over and over again. I was sharing with the folks in the Purpose course before we started. I said, hey, this course is special because I'm going through it too. I'm facilitating and teaching the Discover and Live Your Life Purpose course, but I'm actually going through it with you because there's some things I need to renew. Where do you want me now? How am I supposed to be operating now? I got a message yesterday and I was like, first thing I said is, how am I gonna do that? Oh, wait a second. How's a distraction? Let me just get the vision. My wife texted me. She said she was going through the course with me, too. She texted me. She said, man, the possibility that just came up for me scared me. Perfect. That's how you know it's the right possibility. See, the thing about the Creator is he loves partnership. He loves partnership. And the possibility that he gives you is going to be a partnership that's bigger than you. It's going to be a partnership that you have to be in unison with him through the Spirit to fulfill on. And if you think you're going to fulfill on it with just your physical effort, no. Like he's calling you to him so you can live your best life. One of the reasons that even when, I'm going to take myself, like I'm in this conversation about, okay, you are pressing pause on things and beginning to show me like the next step, like the mission. And it's very easy to say, no. I don't want this new level of identity. I don't want this new level of connection. And what happens often, then we'll relapse into an old narrative. I don't want nothing to do with the old narratives. They didn't serve me. But it happens when I have an emotional experience, but not full renewal. One of the things I told the Purpose cohort yesterday, I said one of the reasons that the course is not emotional, I don't play music, I don't get them into an emotional state, right? A lot of self-development experts, they'll get you into an emotional state. Right, I ain't gonna call no names, but you go there, man, they got, it's like you walk out, you're like charged. I remember I had a client that went to a seminar, real popular, famous self-development coach and speaker. He went to the seminar and he was like, he called me, he was shouting, whoo, man, I feel amazing. I could conquer the world, Linal. I said, excellent. Look forward to talking to you next week. What do you think happened that week when we talked? Complete letdown. Man, I'm trying to get what I got, Linal. I'm trying to get that feeling I had. Yeah, that's not how it works, man. That's not, emotion doesn't create renewal. Emotion doesn't create renewal. You can't speak a language for a day, show up in a particular way, and think that it's going to influence your whole lifestyle. A lot of folks get inspired, but they don't get rebuilt. Matter of fact, I know there's plenty of people that listen to me that are hoping that they never have to, or they won't have to ever pay $1. I don't want to be a Slayer Goals member. I'll just get it on Sundays. This is not enough. I'm telling you. Like you really want to take it deeper? Become a Slayer Goals member. Matter of fact, Spirit just dropped it in me. I'll give it to you for $47. Email me, DM me. I'll put the link back out there. Like you need the path out, man. Come on. But take it deeper. Take it deeper. Because just because you're inspired doesn't mean that you're going to get rebuilt. Folks want to do it the easy way. For a moment, you went through an experience that had you feel seen in that experience, but you're not rooted in identity, so that goes away. That's done. You'll go back to the same group, spend more money so you can feel seen, never the same again, because you have to get rooted in who you're supposed to be. Now, why you still need a coach? Why do you still need support? My wife and I a good portion of our budget still goes to self-development. Why is that? Why do we do that? Well, I happen to understand the law of entropy. The law of entropy is a law in physics. And I've had, if you're a former client and you're listening and you're wondering why, well, man, we did all this work and it worked out so great and now it's not working. They're like, man, okay, he sold me a bad bill of goods. No. That's not how it works. The law of entropy is always working. The law of entropy is always working. What is the law of entropy? Entropy is a measure associated with disorder. And what it says is that a closed system, a system that's not being fed continuously, right? A system that's just sitting tends to move towards increasing disorder unless energy is added to keep it from going to disorder. And so if I have something that's supporting me, right? If the law of entropy didn't exist, you could read a scripture and it lasts for a year. You could say one prayer and it would last for a decade. If the law of entropy didn't exist, because that prayer would just hold you and there would be no disorder. But the law of entropy states that in any closed system, unless some level of energy is added, prayer, meditation, scripture, reading, constantly, unless something is added, it will go into disorder. Whatever is not maintained tend to breaks down. It's spring. You don't believe me. You don't believe me, it's spring. Don't touch your yard until next year. You don't believe the law of entropy. See what happens. See how fast your yard can go into disorder. Don't do a thing. This spring, don't do a thing. Watch what happens. So if that will happen in your yard, don't you know it will happen in your life? Be like, oh man, I could just move. I come home, I watch an episode of my favorite show. I work. Why is my life not working? You better do something to bring it to order. You better do something to bring it to order. Otherwise, the law, it's a law. It's a law. Otherwise, entropy is going to set in. You will not be as good as you were. Why does this matter? So, you're not a yard. You're not a machine. You could take a brand new 2026 vehicle, park it in a vacant lot. The vacant lot can have brand new concrete, brand new lights. Everything is brand new. Leave it there 1 year. See what happens. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Let the storms come. Everything just hit. See what happens. 2 years. See what happens. It was brand new. It was great. It could be one of the most expensive cars out there. See what happens. Law of entropy is going to do its thing. I promise you in 3 or 4 years, you won't even be able to drive it off the lot. If it does start, which you probably won't, right? If it does start, you won't even be able to get it off the lot unless you clean the lot. Well, first, let's name the lie. What's the lie you've been telling yourself? What's the lie that's been repeating? What's the source? One of the things I do in coaching often is like, you're like, what's the source of something? Somebody's dealing with something like, what is the source of that? What's the source of that thought? What's the source of what's going on with you? You got to start separating what happened to you from who you are. Like a lot of us will collapse it. This happened to me, so I'm that. No, that happened to you, but who you are is different. Stop rehearsing these false labels planted in your mind. Got to start speaking the truth out intentionally. Reconnect with what God says about you. How about that? You want to, why there's so much resistance to the word is because it frees you. Identity recovery is a process of renewal, a process of repetition. Because if negative thoughts been hitting you, somebody yesterday, one of the people in the cohort, you were talking about negative thoughts. Like, man, these negative thoughts, they were like, man, as soon as I start to, like, we're in this conversation, I'm noticing an onslaught of resistance and negative thinking. Like, you got to replace that with something that's just as repetitious. Instead, positive affirmations and thoughts. I shared before at the masterclass last year, man, I walk around, I am powerful, I am great, I can do anything I put my mind to. I'm God's child. I'm a child of the King. I have an incredible inheritance. I'm great, I'm powerful. I can do anything I put my mind to. Identity recovery comes with healing. Like sometimes you like call a therapist. I'm not one that says that, hey, like get the physical need met too, so you can actually get the spiritual connection. Sometimes those wounds are not just physical, they are spiritual. You need that help. Get a good therapist, a therapist that has a spiritual backing. Identity recovery comes from a spiritual grounding, and then the beginning of making decisions differently, starting now, one step at a time. Yesterday, we distinguished new possibility in the purpose course. And I was like, hey, look, one step, one action at a time. And then you reinforce that thing. You reinforce it. If you went through the course yesterday and you realized, like, man, I'm dealing with identity theft, Linal, like, man, put this on repeat until it starts to really, like, every part of it makes sense. So I think what happens is there's so much new. I was thinking about this morning. Even in a good way, there's so much new, good material coming out, right? That we'll just like, I want it all. FOMO hits. And sometimes you just got to do what works for you. There's a book. I'm the third time reading this book. Like, I need this book to get into my spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like, Slay Your Goals members, you know what book I'm talking about. We talked about it, right? I'm like, this book needs to get into my spirit. I'm just reading this book. I need this book. You know, like, it's like, yeah, there's some other really good books out there that I want to read. I got a couple on the shelf that I haven't touched yet, but I need this book to get in me. You get where I'm going? Purpose is connection to your identity. This is why it's so powerful. This is why I spent the last 3 shows like, hey, come to, get into the purpose course. One of the individuals in the purpose course was like, man, Linal, I've been listening to you for 13 years. I started listening to your second show and haven't missed a show. And they just took the purpose course last year and retook it this year. Now, I didn't ask this because that wasn't the point of the purpose course. But I can imagine if I asked, do you wish you had taken it sooner? The answer would have been like, man, yes. But what we'll do is we'll kick the ball. And I just said they took it the second year in a row, right? So that tells you something. But we'll kick the ball. Somebody didn't sign up because they had some things to do yesterday and they didn't do nothing. That's how resistance works towards the things that you really, really need. You really, really need. Purpose is not just something you do. Purpose is evidence of who you are. It is your identity. There will always be resistance to you walking in who you truly be. But here's the thing. If purpose helps me make decisions I don't regret, think about that. A regret-proof life? Wow. If purpose is rooted in identity, true identity, then anything outside of that is fraud. Think about that. Now, if there's credit card fraud, if you looked at your statement after this show and you see fraud, most of us we stop everything we're doing and we get 1-800, hello, that's not, no. Like, nah, I'm not, oh, no, you can't do that. But then when it comes to fraudulent use of your life, you're okay? Like, help me make it make sense. What part of your life feels fraudulent right now? You can feel it in your soul. You know, like, oh, man, I'm not supposed to be living like this. What are you doing right now, or who are you running with right now that requires you to be something you're not? What have you built a life around that has you in survival versus your truth of abundance? All these things are connected. One of the reasons we can't live in abundance is because we're not even living our identity. How can you live like abundance is in connection with the Creator? He created everything in abundance. But if I'm separated from that, how can I live in abundance? We want abundance, but we don't want to do the work. What decision would change if you knew who you really were? How would you begin making decisions? I'm beginning to understand why my life is taking the path it's taken, why I had to do some of the things I had to do. Leave corporate America. You know, I'm beginning to understand, like, how could I speak with boldness about these type of things if I hadn't lived it? Walking away from big time clients who don't fit my core values. Like, man, well, how am I gonna? Yeah, man, turn on that contract. How is that going to be replaced? Fraud begins when your life is built around a self that the Creator did not author, that he is not aligned with. That's when fraud begins. And that's why purpose matters so much. I want to end with this. There's a law of compounding effort, right? The law of compounding. We know this in the finances, right? It's a big deal. And compounding is the process in which small gains build on prior gains and create larger effects over time. The resource that I got this from describes it as getting returns based on previous returns. This morning, I'm going to ask you, if your life is building compounding interest, what's growing? Is it the fullness of who you're supposed to be, your true identity? Is it growing? Are you growing in purpose? Or is it fraud? And either way, it's going to grow faster and faster and faster. You're going to get returns upon returns. And so I was talking to someone last week, and they've been struggling with alcohol for years. You think it's getting better or worse? Return upon return upon return. I'm like, look, man, you get the help. Get in the program. Like, please. Like, you got to stop it because it's like it doesn't get better from here. Return upon return. Or do you transform your life and become aligned and get return upon return upon return on that? Like, that's the choice. Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WBON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Linal Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.